Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Di, and today I will be bringing you my March Mystery Madness wrap-up. I had such an amazing time during March Mystery Madness this year. I was able to read a lot more than I have been in the last, I'd say, 6 months or so. My reading has really gone down, and so I was really rejuvenated by all of the hype and everything that was going around with March Mystery Madness, and all of the chats that I was having with participants in our Discord, and it was just a really amazing time. As for what I read, I did really try to stick with the books that I had mentioned on my TBR video, but as always, I veered off track just a little though. I did manage to stay mostly on track. I did not read all of the books that I had in that video, but I read most of them, which is great. I also did not really pay attention to the prompts. My main focus with reading in March was to just read as much as I could. I really wanted to just try to fire up my reading mojo again, and I think I was pretty successful. So I disregarded trying to get all the prompts read. That being said, I did still read for most of the prompts. So I will try to remember to tell you which books will fit the prompts as I go through them, but let me get to the books that I did read and let you know what I thought about them. So the first book I read was The Phantom Music Box. This is the second book in the Haunted Museum mystery series by Suzanne Nguyen. This is a middle grade book about a girl named Emma who is a ballet dancer, or at least she takes some ballet classes. She's not very good at it though, but one of her friends' birthday parties is at this haunted museum, and in the haunted museum there are several different artifacts. The first book in this series was the Titanic locket, and that one I read for March Mystery Madness 2020. That one followed the locket of a passenger that was on Titanic. In this one, Emma is looking at an artifact that's a music box. You can see the music box here on the cover, and she is just enthralled with this music box while she's looking at it in the museum. And she gets a little too close to it while looking at it, and so some of the people that are working there, constantly tell her, don't touch the artifacts, don't touch the artifacts, and she gets tired of hearing that. So out of spite, she goes ahead and touches this music box. Well, later that evening, this music box gets delivered to her house and then starts to wreak havoc on her life. I didn't enjoy this one as much as the Titanic locket. I do really enjoy lots of things Titanic. Like I mentioned in my TBR, I watch a lot of Titanic documentaries. I watch the movie annually. I like to read books that are set on Titanic. And so me picking up the Titanic locket wasn't anything unusual because it was about Titanic. But because this is a part of a series, I decided to go ahead and try to complete the series. There are only 4 books in this series, but I really didn't enjoy this one. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that it revolves primarily around ballet, which I'm not very familiar with. A lot of the terms, I don't know what they mean. I don't know what those dance moves look like. And so that disconnect for me kind of hindered my reading experience with this one. Also, this book heavily relies on the fact that you know what the Blue Danube by Johann Strauss sounds like. Now, I know that a lot of people probably do know what the Blue Danube sounds like. If you heard it, you'd probably recognize it. But you wouldn't know if I just told you it was the Blue Danube. So, I do know what the Blue Danube sounds like, but the way that it's presented in this book is just a description of what the beats are, and so that kind of made it very difficult. And it is referenced a lot in the story. While I did still think the mystery part of this story was interesting, and how Emma was learning about the music box and then figuring out how to return the music box to the museum, I did find those parts interesting. The mentions of the ballet and all of that, because I was unfamiliar with it, really hindered my reading experience for this one. I also didn't find it to be as creepy as the Titanic locket. But I do recommend this series because I think that there is definitely a lesson to be learned in these stories. And while I thought the Titanic locket was really creepy for a middle grade book, this one wasn't so much so. And I think a younger audience would really enjoy these mysteries. The next book I picked up was Taking the Titanic. This one's by James Patterson with Scott Slavin. It is one of the book shots, so it's a nice sized read. It went by really fast for me. This one is about a heist that these two characters try to put in motion on the maiden voyage of Titanic. And I was unfortunately unimpressed with this one as well. It was interesting, of course, because it is on Titanic. The setting I really enjoyed, but the two main characters in this one were highly unlikable. I couldn't find anything to like about these two characters. Obviously, the things that they are doing on the Titanic are not nice things, not great things for two people to be doing to other people on the Titanic, but I still enjoyed kind of being on the Titanic, if you know what I mean. The setting is what drew me to this book. The setting is what I enjoyed about this book, but the mystery part, not so much. I am glad I finally got to this one though, because it has been sitting on my shelf for a while. Then I picked up The Black Dahlia. This one is by James Elroy. It is the first book in what I believe is called the LA Quartet, and this one is a fictionalized story based on the murder investigation of the Black Dahlia, or Elizabeth Short. I was vaguely familiar with this case before going into this book. It's the reason why I had picked up this book in the first place. Now, there has been a movie made on this novelization, but I haven't watched that one either. I actually ended up DNFing this book. This book follows two investigators, two detectives that are assigned to investigate this murder. I don't know if the detectives in this book were based on the actual detectives that investigated the murder, but I did not find them likable at all. I made it 56 pages in before I decided to DNF this one. Now, I don't DNF things often. It's just something that I try not to do, but this one in particular, I felt like I had to. Besides the fact that I didn't really like the two detectives, I couldn't find anything to like about them. There were several instances of racial slurs in this one, and we're talking a lot. Like, there were racial slurs for Japanese people, Chinese people, Jewish people, Mexican people, and black people. And I just can't. It bothers me when there's one racial slur in a book. But to have this many in 56 pages was too much for me, and I just decided to put it down. There was nothing in this that could have redeemed this story for me. And at 56 pages, they still weren't investigating this murder, which is the whole reason why I was interested in this book in the first place. So, unfortunately, this was a big bust for me. I will not be watching the movie. I have no interest in reading this book anymore either. And that was very disappointing. So the next book I decided to pick up was A Deadly Inside Scoop. This was the Book One Cozy's Club selection and the first book in the Ice Cream Parlor Mystery series by Abby Collette. This one follows our main character Bronwyn, who is investigating the murder of a man who has wronged her family in the past while trying to reopen her family's ice cream parlor during the wintertime. I do have a bunch of videos on this book. If you're interested in my spoilery, candid thoughts on this one while I was reading it, you can check out my playlist down below for my chapter by chapter videos. But if you're interested in my first impressions of this series and my non-spoilery thoughts on this installment, check out my Book One Cozies Club series first impressions video on this one. And so because I already have videos up for that, I'm not going to say any more about this one, but I did enjoy it. I will be continuing to the next one. It does include recipes, so that was really great as well. The next book I read was Phantom Quartz. This is the 6th and final book in the Stacy Justice mystery series by Barbara Anino. This one follows a reluctant witch, Stacy Justice. At the beginning of the series, she's a reluctant witch. She doesn't want to have anything to do with her powers. She's supposed to be a very powerful witch, but she just doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And as the series goes on, she gets pulled back into it and kind of changes her mind about not accepting her abilities. This series has taken me a really, really long time to finish. I had actually read, I believe, several of the books in this series last year. I intended on finishing the series since I only had the one installment left, but I just didn't get around to it. Like I said, my reading tanked, and so I decided to go ahead and get a series finished during March Mystery Madness, and this fulfilled that for me. Unfortunately, I was less than impressed with this one. There were things that happened in it that I couldn't understand why they were happening. The mystery part of it was kind of confusing. It felt disjointed, and it also felt fractured. I can't really explain to you what I mean by that without going into spoilers, but I didn't enjoy this one. Plus the fact that this is the last book in the series. At least I think it is. It's been several years since this particular book was published, but it kind of leaves on a questionable thing, something that needs more explaining, and it doesn't look like we're getting it. So, yeah, didn't really enjoy that one, but I'm glad to have finished this series. This one does have additional novellas, but when I consider a series completed, I don't consider novellas. So as long as I've read all of the books in the series, I consider that series completed. So I have read all of the books in the series, and so I'm done with this series. I'm glad I finally finished it, but unfortunately I didn't really enjoy this last installment. Then I decided to try to finish another series. So I read David L. Golemon's In the Still of the Night. This is the second book in the Supernatural series, which is about a group of ghost hunters, kind of. The first book in this series follows this group of people that are investigating a haunted house. It's very much like The Haunting, the movie The Haunting, and Rose Red by Stephen King, that miniseries. If you think about those two things together, I feel like that really explains the supernatural as well. This book follows that same group that explores the haunted house in the supernaturals, but they are investigating something that is literally haunting the President of the United States in this one. Now, unfortunately, the Supernaturals ends on a description of a case that I thought was going to be investigated in this next book. But this next book is investigating something completely different. And again, you can see that the title of this book is referencing a piece of music. And The Still of the Night is a 50s and 60s, I believe it's 50s or 60s song. And this book also heavily relied on your knowledge of 50s and 60s music. Now, my dad is a big fan of 50s and 60s music, and so I listened to a bit of it growing up, but unfortunately that didn't help me very much with this one. I do know In the Still of the Night, but because some of the songs that were mentioned throughout this book were familiar to me, when I came across titles or lyrics from other 50s and 60s songs in this book, it kind of held me up because I would read them and I'd have to think about it to see if it was actually something I knew or maybe it wasn't something that I knew, but I couldn't tell. And so I spent quite a bit of time reading the lyrics, looking at the titles and trying to figure out if it was one I knew. Yes, I know it probably would have been easier for me to just go to YouTube or Spotify or whatever and type in the song and listen to it, but I didn't want to be pulled out of the story by doing that, and I guess by me pondering on it, that's kind of exactly what happened. But this one was still very interesting because this story does follow the team trying to investigate something that's haunting the president. It has to do with the president's past, and therefore we are also dealing with things that happened in the past. So there is mention of war and casualties of war and things like that. This is also pretty gruesome in the things that happens while they're investigating, things that happens to some of the investigators, and things that are actually happening to the president. And I was fully prepared for that because in the Supernaturals it was pretty gruesome as well. But this one also started very slow for me. Now the Supernaturals also started slow, and I thought that because we had all of that out of the way, this one would pick up and get going a lot faster. That was not the case with this one. And I don't know if it's because he was trying to reintroduce the characters to us or whatever, but this one was also a slow to start thing for me. Once the investigation started going, though, it got more interesting. I did listen to part of this on audiobook borrowed through Libby from my library. This was an interesting read, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the Supernaturals. But again, I am glad to have finished another series because this is a duology. I wish he would have written more in this series because I really do enjoy stories like this, but the end of this book really seems like that's going to be it. Now, I do know that he writes like a sci-fi type of series, which I have acquired the first book of, so I'm very interested to see what that series is like for me. But that being said, I am glad to have finished this book. I did enjoy my ride with the Supernaturals, and I'm glad to have finished another series. So the last book I read was pretty spontaneous. My friend and co-host Raul over at Latin Lecture said that he was going to be reading The Last Vampire by Christopher Pike as part of his March Mystery Madness TBR, and I have been wanting to read this one for a very long time. I have started to go through my Pike and Stein, or Christopher Pike and R.L. Stein collection of books. They were two of the authors that I really enjoyed while I was growing up. So when he had said that, you know, if anybody would be interested in buddy reading any of these, let me know, I jumped on that opportunity and we buddy read The Last Vampire together. This is the first book in the Last Vampire series, and it follows our main character, Alina, who is this blonde lady right here in the front, and she is the last vampire. However, somebody has figured out her secret, and so she's on a quest to find out who it is that has found out her secret and how much they actually know. I'm kind of glad that I read this one now instead of when I was really into Christopher Pike and R.L. Stein books, because I was about 12 or 13 when I was really into those books, and this one is pretty racy compared to other ones that I've read, or at least other ones that I have remembered reading. It's been quite a while since I read those, which is why I'm trying to reread them. But I think because this is the start of a series, there is again a lot of setup telling you about how our main character became a vampire, how she's been living her life, and all of that kind of is necessary for you to know because of how this story goes. Like, the mystery of this story is based on the fact that Alina is a vampire. Like I said, somebody has let her know that they know her secret. So you kind of need to know things. And I feel like knowing how Alina became a vampire and all of that kind of bogged down the story a little bit, because we are bouncing back and forth between present and past, and because this book is so short, things kind of need to go quickly, so you don't really get a fleshed out kind of picture, I guess. But like I said, if I was 12 or 13 reading this, it wouldn't have bothered me so much. Because I read it as an adult, I am recognizing things like that. I do have most of the other books in this series already. I, in fact, just picked up the one that I was missing, so I should have a complete set soon. But I'm glad I finally started this series. The next book in this series sounds more like it's my style. It's more of a murder mystery than a I know who you are blackmailing type of mystery, I guess. But yeah, I'm glad to have read this one. I'm glad to have started another series, but this particular installment was just okay for me. So that will do it for all of the books that I read for March Mystery Madness. I read 6 books and DNF'd 1. That is the most amount of novels that I have read during the month. I did actually get in a couple volumes of manga as well, because I needed to get my booktube spin selections done. So I actually read quite a bit in March, and that was all thanks to March Mystery Madness. All thanks to everybody that I talked to in the Discord, and all of the participants helping me to feel energized about reading during the month of March. I forgot to tell you which books I kind of set aside for the prompts. So I decided that The Last Vampire was going to be for the single prompt, because if you're the last one, you're the only one, and that is a single. So that's what I'm using for that one, and The Still of the Night would be for time, because night. This one could also work for color, because there are some, like nail polishes, for example, that are called night. So I could stretch that to count for color. A Deadly Inside Scoop counted for space, inside being the space word. The Black Dahlia was supposed to be my color prompt. And it could have also doubled for the name prompt, because the Black Dahlia was the name that they gave to Elizabeth Short when she was the murder victim. I did read 56 pages of this, so I guess you could say that I did finish the color prompt. I at least attempted it, but I just couldn't with that book. Taking the Titanic would have been my bonus, because it is the title that drew me to this book, being Titanic. And then the Phantom Music box would be for a place, because it's part of the Haunted Museum mystery series, and it says Haunted Museum right over here above the title. So I count that. And on Goodreads, it does show right after the title, Haunted Museum 2. The Phantom Quartz book will count for person, because it's Stacy Justice number 6, the Phantom Quartz. Again, so I guess quartz could also be a color. But I don't know. It doesn't really bother me if I completed all the prompts or not. My main focus in March was to read as much as I could, and I think I definitely did that. So I am glad to have participated in yet another round of March Mystery Madness. Thank you to all of you who have participated. Definitely come and join our Discord, because we are keeping that open year-round, and there has been a lot of great chat. Also, if you're participating in Amish in April, there is a chat thread for that in our Discord for any mystery novels that you are reading for Amish in April. Again, there has been a lot of great chatter about those Amish mysteries as well. and I've just had a really awesome time. So thank you again for participating in March Mystery Madness. Let me know how you did during the month. What was your favorite book of March Mystery Madness? Did you complete all the books that you wanted to read? How many books did you read for March Mystery Madness? If you have nothing much to say to me or are just too shy to leave a comment, if you could just leave me a magnifying glass emoji down in the comments below to let me know that you watched this video, it would really help me out and would be greatly appreciated. So thank you again, and that will do it for me today. I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all safe and healthy. And until next time, take care and smile always. Bye.